Islam family.
Islam.
Islam.
Peace to the family. If y'all can hear me at this time, then
Islam.
brothers. Islam, brother Heru. So pause me one more. Let me go ahead. I was yeah. I'm gonna stop it right here.
Islam Sheikh.
Right. Islam Sheikh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Praise Allah. And we're just gonna go ahead and go in. What I want to do right now is body that's on the chat. We have some people on the chat right now. Do our show, which is Masterminds, and currently we have with us tonight Heru Ranesi, Governor, Temple down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And I just want to give a brief introduction before just discuss some things. Today's topic, of course, the title of the show, To the Moors, and basically we'll actually discuss book, which goes by the same title. Of course, we'll be speaking on God concept of the Moors, Allah the one, the Allah the many, about spook, a man, is the Arab God. We're just going to touch on some things to go in. I want to, and before I even do that, let me rise, beginning all things in the name of Allah, giving honors to prophets, all faithful members of the Moorish Divine National Movement. Give honors to each and every one of you who is on this chat at this time. Brother, my esteemed guests, man and woman, he honors Allah, Islam. So, yield the floor to my brother, Islam.
Islam Sheikh. I rise, giving all praises to the great God of the universe, who is known to the Moorish Americans affectionately by the name of Allah. Allah is the author, the creator, the almighty, the eternal, and incomprehensible. All praises are due to Allah. I extend high honors to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science, savior of humanity. I extend high honors to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Movement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations, for Moorish Americans, for all those who, according to the religion of Islam, giving honors to the members of Temple number 19 here in Atlanta, all the faithful laborers, and giving honors to our brother Shem for offering his platform for us to demonstrate our portion of understanding. Islam, Moors.
Islam, praise Allah. Give me one moment. I'm just gonna make sure.
Yes, sir.
As far as the volume, I want to make sure there's no echoes. Islam.
Okay.
Okay.
Brother right. Shem, you're going in and out. I don't know if that's my end or your end.
On my end, I just muted the extra that I had on, so we'll end that. All right.
Islam.
So I'd just like to start off, Sheikh, first and foremost, the people know that receiving your book, Who is Allah to the Moors, just to give listening audience a background, converse with you, how we got to link up. We actually have, you know, journal,
Yes,
which
sir.
you may want to speak on later. But we was able to I ended up we actually did an exchange of some literature. I sent you some of mine, and in return you sent me two books. One was Freedom and the Law, and I was really both books are powerful books. I was really
Praise Allah.
care that we're speaking on now. A lot of things that was in line with a lot of the things that I was writing and I was studying myself.
Yes,
I
sir.
would like to ask you first and foremost you to write this book.
Well, if it pleases Allah, the primary impetus for writing the book, or the inspiration for writing the book, was when I first proclaimed my nationality back in October 2001. And, going throughout the highways and the byways and just, conversing with people, letting them know that my nationality was Moorish American, and that my religion was Islamism. There were a lot of questions, amongst the Asiatics, about, Islamism and about, the term Muslim and, our usage of the holy, people have a broad misconception, the name Allah, primarily because of the trauma, the chattel slavery, everything that was removed, and what our people would put through. We were disconnected, from the ways of our forefathers and all the cultural traditions and our ways of approach of everything regarding that which is divine and national. So, at that point, going into the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's works to really delve into what his draw was, the name Allah, and what the message that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali had to bring, to us regarding such, and to go around to different, Moorish Americans, and available, that could, extend the learning in this area, and and maybe it could have been my journey, but that many books available to give a Moorish perspective, extending, the learning of the Prophet's foundation regarding the term Allah. So, to like 2000, late 2007, early 2008, my heart to, actually go in and, start doing the research and start compiling different notes, on the history of the term Allah, whether did it begin with, with the Prophet Muhammad of Arabia, peace be upon him? Is it a foreign concept, so on and so forth? And into, the book that we have now as Who is Allah to the Moors, that is, that we published through our publishing company known as Alhambra Publishing.com, which is Alhambra19pub.com. But that was the inspiration, and this book took, it took me on its own unique journey, and unfolding the name Allah, because he tells us, he instructs us that Allah cannot be circumscribed. So when you open up a topic like this, it becomes quite, it becomes quite broad, and what we finally released as the final cut of the book is actually a slimmed down version, because well over 400-500 pages, and probably could have kept going if I would have took just many, many more years to go into it. But for print costs and to be, kind of frugal, we kind of slimmed it down and, just hit, certain bullet points that we thought would be effective. So that was the inspiration behind it.
Praise Allah, definitely, and a great book. I want to ask you, because you started off by saying nationality, journey you went through as far as questions about Allah and so on and so forth.
Yes,
So
sir.
I want to ask you this question: to proclaim your nationality, what brought you to the Moorish Divine National Movement?
That, praise Allah. That's definitely an interesting journey right there. Um, I'm currently 45 years old now. I was born in October 19th. years old. I'm originally from New Jersey, South Jersey, by Atlantic City, small town called Vineland. And when I was 14 years old, I used to make a lot of trips to, Philadelphia. I came across a group known as the Ansar Allah communities. Now, for those who may be listening to to this interview, back in those days, they might be younger, and might not, understand like, what I'm, talking about. Let me put in kind of like a perspective. Back in those days, which would have been like the late 80s, like, like 80, just around like 86, something like that, 1986. In the major, Asiatic, urban centers of America, you would have like these, these large concert circles to the point where you go out in the street corners in like the downtown areas or wherever, man, like on various corners, you might have like a Nation of Islam maybe on one corner, propagating the faith, Hebrew Israelites on another corner, the Nation of Gods on the earth, so on and so forth. The town I come from is a small town in New Jersey, so we didn't have all of that. So when we went over to Philadelphia, that was my first like, glimpse into what, people now know as, quote unquote consciousness. That term, I like to use the term enlightenment, but that's another term, another sense. But in Philadelphia, the group that attracted me the most visually was a group called the Ansars, led by a brother named Imam Isa, who many now know as Dr. Malachi York. I began to, ask, to propagate various different questions, and he was, hitting me with things I had never heard before. At that point, I was raised as a Baptist, so my or religion was filtered through, the European nations via the Baptist tradition. So, for someone, to tell me that, Jesus was an Asiatic, or, that God is not the proper name for the creator, it's Allah, which was actually the first time I'd heard that term, if I was to fast forward, I ended up, joining the organization and so on and so forth. And, it was like 5 years that went past. And when I was around 19, I joined the Ansar Allah community, which was in transition. By that point, became known as the Holy Tabernacle Ministries, and which happens to be the common path. The brother Shem and share in New Jersey, studying with the Holy Tabernacle Ministries, and then I actually moved down to Atlanta on a teaching mission, with the same organization. Worked my way up to, Dr. York had some, tract of land down here, 476 acres, moved up to the land. I was, invited to move up as a teacher. Got promoted to become his national representative in the year 1997. And then, later, that was earlier in 1997. And later in the year 1997, due to, political differences and stuff like that, I was no longer a part of the organization. I left. And, so that was kind of the fast forward journey, that kind of led me up to, proclaiming my nationality. After I left Dr. York's organization, I was kind of disenchanted, kind of rebellious to anything relative to, any form of knowledge itself or whatever. And it was actually one of my elders, a brother named Azim Abdullah Bey, who actually, reintroduced me to the Prophet. If I can go back to 1986 really quick, from Dr. Malachi York's People, was a book called Who Was Noble Drew Ali, ironically. And I still have that book in my possession. And that was the first time I heard the name Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So, years later, when I got in contact with my elder, Azim Abdullah Bey, he started, he was asking me different questions about, what I knew or whatever. And he asked me to, what we know as the divine question of the ages, what's your nationality? All I knew, I couldn't answer that question. The brother, brought forth, various literature from the Prophet, and began to, unfold, the Moorish Divine National Movement to me. And then the brothers out of Baltimore, the Moorish National Republic, Moorish American National Republic. And that's originally under brother Joel Bratton Bay. That's originally who I proclaimed my nationality under, because they did a naturalization ceremony, as they call it, in my hometown. And that's when I originally proclaimed my nationality. And that's October 2001. So that's pretty much the fast forward journey, to what led me to Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
Praise Allah. That's wonderful, brother. And said there a lot of as far as our background, as far as getting to there. And like you, and another thing that always struck me was during the Ansar Allah community, there that one picture, that one famous picture of "We Are Family, Nubian
Ooh,
Nation,"
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
for all of the different among them being, of course, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable
Mhm.
Marcus Garvey,
Yes,
Honorable,
sir.
et cetera. Really impactful to me. And it's always interesting how everything comes full circle. Whereas
Yes, sir.
Moors, everyone has their unique journey.
Mhm.
It just shows the power of Ali brought. So with that, I want to get to your book, and I did post a link in the chat. So pub.com
Yes, sir.
/books.
Yes, sir.
All of his books are there available for purchase. And definitely get this book, Who is Allah to the Moors. Now, one of the first things I want to ask you in reference to this is when you first see the cover of this book, the first line says Remedies for Civil Death, lesson number 7. So
Yes, sir.
obviously this is not the first lesson that you put out, but are these lessons entitled Remedies for Civil Death?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Um, they are. It is a series. The reason why it's titled "Remedies for Civil Death," as our prophet instructs us, man, he lets us know that if you don't proclaim your nationality, before the nations of the earth, you're subject to all the abuses and the mistreatments that the lawful citizens care to bestow. And the word civil, just relating to the word citizen, the rights of a citizen, to be an active part, of the government and to govern yourself accordingly. So in this series, we go through and we cover things from, not just a national perspective, but also a divine. Many ones who come to the Moorish Science Temple of America or the Moorish Divine National Movement, nowadays, they do it via the internet. One thing, in my demonstrations, when I demonstrate in the temple on Holy Day, a common theme I often demonstrate is that I say that, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali cannot be found on the internet. And I know that's a strange statement because you can type in Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you can pull up pictures of Noble Drew Ali, you can pull up historical things that the Prophet demonstrated or whatever. But what you can't get via the internet is the spirit of the movement, you know. And what we labor to do in this series, Remedies for Civil Death, is to unfold from the spirit of what the Prophet laid down, by way of his literature, and using his literature as the foundation, began to unfold various different concepts, whether it's from international law, whether it's national law, municipal law, whatever. And then with this particular book, we start going into the divine side, and then we have to realize too the divine and national side, because he said Moor's divine national movement. It's a conjunctive principle. It's not, you can't separate. Well, I'm just going to demonstrate the national side, and that's it. Or I'm just going to demonstrate the divine side. The two are inexplicably linked. So in this one, we go deeper inside the divine side, because again, as a citizen, you have to be able to demonstrate your free national name as well as your national descent. So our God concepts, and I'm using the term God loosely, our God concept is filtered through our national descent. So now, if you don't have a national descent or pedigree lineage of your forefathers that you can connect to, you're going to filter your divine concepts through the eyes and the experience of foreign nations. And this is the primary concept why when people hear the name Allah, or they hear Asiatics, who have reclaimed the name Allah because it's not foreign to us, they actually think that we're worshiping something foreign. So inside the book, we go in, almost like we feel it's like our civic duty, as citizens of the United States of America, to explain, what Allah is from a Moorish American perspective, and with all the, Islamophobia and everything, in the current, political landscape and in the media and all that type of stuff, Moorish Americans definitely need to, produce more literature about, our perspective of and our approach of Allah by way of our prophet. And we have to stand on the fact that we did receive a prophet here in the Americas, an American-born prophet, none other than Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
Indeed. We definitely did. And like you said, it's important that
Absolutely.
we need the Moorish authors and scholars to really be out in the forefront, which is why I reached out, as well as, so many other work you're doing is really important.
Praise Allah.
Um, Praise Allah. I want to touch on one of your chapters, which is chapter 3, which is entitled. Well, before I even go there,
Mhm.
I want to ask you this: who are not into Islam or anything of, when they hear the word Allah, them are dealing with it from a European lens.
Mm-hmm.
Even those who say that they're not religious, the first thing they're going to say is that Allah is a spook. That's spookism, the Moors in the temple,
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, or that, oh, that's that religion, deity, etc., etc. You
Yes, sir.
that um, type of conversation, how do you respond to those?
Well, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali in returning, Islamism to us, he hit it in several different areas, which is why I expressed the ones to break a bad habit that we picked up when we were demonstrating Christianity, and that habit is what I refer to as plucking verses. Like, in other words, when people quote the Prophet, they'll pull a particular statement out and use it without squaring it, with other sections of literature, that built that aspect up. All right. So, like example, we have our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, you know, when people research the broader or the international world of Islam, clearly there's a text called the Holy Quran, right? And the Holy Quran was received by the Prophet Muhammad of Arabia, peace be upon him. First revelation in 622 AD, all the way down to 632, and 610 AD to 632, and so what happens is, why is it that the Moorish Americans have their own Quran? We have our own Quran because the experiences that happened to us, and for the Father of the universe to bring us out of that condition, we couldn't use a method of application that was demonstrated by other nations because our situation was unique. All right, but the Prophet in his format of demonstrating with us, he gave us something known as our authority, which is on the back of the Quran questionnaire, and it says on the back of it is that our power and authority is derived from the great Quran of Muhammad, right? And if you go to the great Quran of Muhammad, Quran of Mecca, as some would say, in that text it says that very nature, right? When you start getting into Islam as defined by that, it helps to have the Shem and I have, because dealing with the Ansar Allah community back in those days, one of the things that we studied was languages, and it definitely helps, to be multilingual, especially if you're dealing with concepts, that were dealt with by your forefathers. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali returned Islam to us because it was a method of thought that was dealt with by our ancient fathers, Moorish ancient fathers. So, dealing with the term Islam, the word Islam from the Arabic language just means peace, right? But, if you were to further unfold it, you get tranquility, you get ease, you get balance, definition something similar to the concept known as China as the Tao, which they spell Tao, which is symbolized by the yin and yang emblem, right? The definitions of Islam or that peace is it's the balance between basically your higher and lower selves, right? But when people hear this, because of the European psychology and because of the propaganda, they think we're talking about something that an anchor man is talking about on CNN, or they think that we're demonstrating something that is an Arabian ideal by way of the Arabian nationalism that's known as Wahhabism, which is a method of thought founded by a man named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who was basically like this, he was a religious zealot that linked up with the Saud family to create their own form of Islam to suit their political condition. Okay, so when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali comes and says, "Well, what is your religion?" and your religion is Islamism, the answer is Islamism. He's giving you your own treatment of Islam, all right, based on your political circumstances. And all the nations of the earth, whether it be in China, whether it be in Indonesia, whether it be in Senegal, Ghana, Egypt, Sudan, everybody has their own approach towards Islam, right? And we, as the Moorish American Muslims, we are no different. And to understand, the Moorish American Muslim version of Islam, you'd have to study all of the works of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and those Moorish American authors, as the brother Shem said, who based their writings on what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. Okay, so that's a lot of the history that a lot of the background that you have to go into explaining. You just can't take it for granted that when you tell people that you're a Muslim, or that you practice Islam or Islamism, that they're going to understand, and have the gifts of understanding to understand what you mean. They're going to take for granted that you're talking about the same thing they're talking about on the media outlets, and that's what we have to bust up. We have to produce our own form of propaganda. Propaganda is not always a negative word. Propaganda is it's basically taking control of the press in order to put forth your ideals that's going to uplift your own people or uplift fallen humanity. So that's the methodology we use. And again, they gave birth to this book and all the writings of Alhambra 19 Publishing.
Islam, and you made a great point about propaganda not always being something bad. And then you mentioned earlier about our authority. If you look at the back of our authority, it will tell you Science Temple of America deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad to propagate
Absolutely.
learning and the truth of the great prophet of Ali. From propagate, you get propagate. So that's pretty
right.
much all we're doing.
That's right.
You mentioned about the languages, and we're definitely going to talk into the languages in the book later on.
Okay.
If you can expound the three, I'm going to read.
Yes, sir.
And from there, so it says, the Moors do not acknowledge idols as the embodiment. The Moors do not have an aversion art or statues, since it's in our blood to have an appreciation for art. After all, the Moors are the bloodline descendants and devotees Egyptian mystery system, Kemet being the capital dominion of Africa. And then you go on to say that the Moors do not worship the finite or temporal. So
yes, sir.
I'd like for you to kind of expound on that in reference to the absolute.
Islam. Okay, so if I can, I'd like to, draw from some verses from the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple. That was kind of the inspiration for that section. Chapter 1, the creation and fall of man. I like to refer to these first verses as like immutable laws, because if you get into researching a lot of the ancient wisdom that was left, especially like the Kemetic wisdom, you'll see a lot of parallels. There's actually a text that's attributed to who they refer to as Hermes Trismegistus, or who the Holy Quran refers to as as Thoth, but the text is referred to as the divine Pymander, Pyman, N as in no, Der, the divine Pymander. But inside of there, it gives of laws that almost mirror, the opening of the creation and fall of man, which actually reads, it says, "Time never was when man was not. If life of man at any time began, a time would come when it would end. The thoughts of Allah cannot be circumscribed. No finite mind can comprehend things infinite." All finite things are subject unto change. All finite things will cease to be because there was a time when they were not. The bodies and the souls of men are finite things, and they will change. Yea, from the finite point of view, the time will come when they will be no more. But man himself is not the body nor the soul. He is a spirit and part of Allah. Now, right there, it gives a bunch of things. But relative to the question that you asked, it deals with Allah as the absolute, or like it says in our 101 keys, that Allah is Aut, A-U-G-H-T, meaning all, right? Even in the path, that we traveled before, we used to use the term of, the all, right? That's nothing more than saying Allah is all, or Allah is Aut, right? But Allah is the ultimate absolute. The Moorish treatment of Allah is that, as has been revealed to us and according to our comprehension, is that totality of all things in existence, known, unknown, and unknowable, right? But also, as the Prophet continues in that section, he makes a statement which creates a distinction between the Moorish American Muslim approach versus, let's say, the Wahhabi approach. Because the Wahhabi approach will tell you, and I'm not beating up on the Wahhabis, or let's say the Salafis, or any of the other groups, because we can't, it's against our laws to speak radical agitating against other organized groups. However, just as to create a distinction, because there are groups that will tell you that Allah is a God in heaven separate from creation. Okay? That is not what was revealed to us by our prophet, Noble Raleigh. That is not what was demonstrated by our Moorish ancient fathers. And if I was to give, a few names of the Moorish ancient fathers, because again, we're instructed to, honor our fathers and mothers, that our days will be longer upon the earth land that the great God Allah has given us, that the Lord our God Allah has given thee. But in order to honor your forefathers, you have to know their names in order to study their works. So if you were to research, a brother that, the Europeans anglicized as Averroes, which is Averoes, Averroes, right? Averroes is an anglicized corruption. His name was actually Ibn Rushd, which is IBN. Next word, Rushd, which is RUSHD. Another one, Al-Farabi, A-L. Next word, Farabi, F-A-R-A-B-I. And one more, Avicenna, which the European calls him Avicenna, A-V-I-C-N-A. But his real name was Ibn Sina, which is I-B-N. Next word, Sina, S-I-N-A. If you research the works of these Moorish ancient fathers, you can see that they made connection with quote unquote God concept, right? That surrounds us and permeates us. So it's not only outside of yourself, but it's within the core of your DNA in every cell. And that statement that the Prophet made, Prophet Noble Raleigh, that creates a distinction between us and other modern Islamic groups, and I'm putting that in quotation marks, Islamic. It says, but man himself is not the body nor the soul. He is a spirit and part of Allah. And which part is he talking about? He's talking about the spirit self. That part of you that can't pass away. That is the Allah in you. That is also known as the higher self of you. That is known as the mother of all virtues and the harmonies of life, breeding justice, mercy, love, and right. That higher, creative, generous, all the benevolent attributes that we attribute to man. This is the Allah working in man and woman. Okay, and that that Allah is not measured up by time. It's not subject to beginning and end. It is not subject to gender. A lot of times we might say Allah He, but in our Holy Quran in the Moorish Science Temple of America, there's a chapter called the Soul of Man, and it refers to the soul of man as she. If you go to ancient scriptural texts of our forefathers, such as the Wisdom of Solomon, inside the Wisdom of Solomon, which they refer to as an apocryphal text, but the Wisdom of Solomon refers to the concept of wisdom as she. You see, so we don't have those gender wars, because again, when one hears the name Allah, the conversation about Alat comes up, who was the female approach in Arabia of the so-called masculine concept of Allah, right? But we've always had you know, a masculine and feminine interpretation of that, because that's, you know, humanity's attempt to anthropomorphize the creator. Because again, in finite comprehension, you have to bring things to your, you know, to your understanding in order to be able to explain it. Because how do you explain, you know, how do you put in a sentence or create a word for all that is? How do you even begin to describe that? You fall short by using the medium of language, because the aspect of language that, you know, that we use to convey ideals is, you know, is finite by its very existence, you know, and we find that to be true. And I'll do this and I'll give the fuller back. But even when we're translating, you know, because when we translate Allah into English, or attempt to, you can't translate Allah into God, because God, its origins are Germanic, and the experience of the Germanic peoples was completely different than that of the Asiatic peoples, right? But because that, you know, the Germanic, you know, the European languages finds, you know, the English finds roots in, you know, those Germanic languages, that, you know, we find God as a loan word that exists in English. So people say Allah God, you know, but that's actually a horrible translation of that. And the prophet knew we were dealing with that. So, you know, he tells us if we must use that, use great God, because at least it creates a distinction of, amongst the many concepts of God that it can exist, you will be talking about the greatest ideal of that, you know, when referring to Allah. I yield the floor to our brother Shamil.
Islam, praise Allah. And definitely that I'm glad you mentioned about the aspect of the recognized as the she. So you have the aspect of the dress as well as the feminine.
Absolutely.
And because I'm sure there will be brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters from other Islamic sects, whether they be Sunni, Shiite,
Mm-hmm.
Wahhabi,
Mm-hmm.
in Mecca,
Yes, sir.
either speaks directly or alludes to Allah as all.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. If I could draw from the Holy Quran of Mecca, Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the second surah, and Al-Baqarah, ayat 255. Surah 2, verse 255. Which reads, Allah, excuse me, Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most great merciful. It says, Allah, there's but He, and this is translation, right? It's Illah, which is I, which we can get into that later. But it says, Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, supporter of all. No slumber can seize Him, nor sleep. His are all the things in the heavens and on earth. Who is thee can intercede in His presence, except as He permitteth. He knoweth what appeareth to His creatures as before or after or behind them. Nor shall they compass aught. That's that word they use in translation. Nor shall they compass aught of His knowledge, except as He willeth. His throne doth extend over the heavens and the earth, and He feeleth no fatigue in guarding them and preserving them, for He is the Most High, the Supreme in glory. And I like to go like one verse down after that, because that verse right there, 255, is known, it's known all through the Islamic world. No matter where you travel, verse, because it's known as Ayatul Courtesy, or the verse word courtesy is the word for chair or for throne. Okay, but you know, people take this verse and, you know, they recite it to people when they're ill, you know, in the Arabic and so on and so forth. So it's a very known verse. But if you go one verse down, it says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects Tagut," which T-A-G-U-T, that's an Arabic word meaning illusion. Whoever rejects Tagut or illusion and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold that never breaks. And Allah heareth and knoweth all things. That handhold that never breaks. You know, the Prophet Noble Raleigh gave us, that's the hand press. but it hits the point of there's no compulsion in religion. So you're not to take, and the word religion is the word deen. And, in Arabic, there's no word for religion. That's, again, another bad translation. The word that they use, there's two words that they use that they translate as religion. One is deen, alliterated over, it'd be D-I-Y-N, which means, judgment. It's the same Hebrew, it's the same word they have in Hebrew as like one of the Israelite tribes, which is Dan, which is the tribe of like it means literally means judge. And they use another term, which is millah. And millah is which is M-I-L-A-T, right? And millet is known. That's the actual thing when people talk about Islam. They define Islam by ceremony and form. Okay, well, that's it's on your phone there, not in that sense, right? But back to that ayatul, this defining Allah all, or was dealt with in a I know because in Moorish literature, that's about the prophet's salvation. Lord not the weak newspaper that was put out, the most high came out of behold that. But in ultimate was Islam. All right. It says, I'm just going to object of life according to Islam. Islam teaches that man is born with unlimited capacity. Islam does not idea that man was born in sin. Everyone, the seed of perfect development, solely within Moor, his fortune. The doctrine of Islam is the unity of God. Allah, all power. He is perfect and holy, all wisdom, all knowledge, and all truth. Some of his great attributes so far, he is free from all defects, holy. He is personal to us. We can see his attributes working, but he is nevertheless empty. He is infinite, perfect, and holy. We do not believe that death, decay, or sleep overtake him. And if I was to stop right there, that is not a direct, correlation or parallel to Ayatul Kursi, where it says sleep nor slumber overtakes Allah not. All right? But moving on. Neither do we believe that he is a helplessly inactive and inert force. Nothing happens without his knowledge and will. Another extraction or parallel from Ayatul Kursi, Surah 255. It says, he begets not. If you were to go, Surah 2, IKA, Surah 2, class, it uses the term and the phrase in Arabic. It says lam yalid wa lam yulad, and which means he begets not, nor is he begotten. And that term yalad and yulad comes from the Arabic term walad, which means to give physical birth to. So it means that Allah does not have any physical truth. In other words, he didn't of having a wife and intercourse to make children, right? But in the sense of banu, or adopted children, you'll find that all through the ancient scriptures where it refers to Allah, where it refers to Jesus as the son of Allah, or John the Baptist as the son of Allah. And certain letters, Prophet Noble Raleigh referred to himself as a son of Allah. And in that sense, that's the adopted son of Allah, right? But then it goes and says, he begets not, nor is he begotten, because these are the traits of a frail and weak humanity. And the last section, it says, this unity of Allah is the first and foremost foremost pillar of Islam, and every other belief hangs upon it. And that concept is known in Arabic as Tawheed. And the root of the word Tawheed is Wahada, which means oneness. The chief aspect of Islam is the oneness of Allah. Every rites and ritual, all the things that you can do as a Muslim hangs upon the oneness of Allah. Not being an external thing, it's the unity between the higher and lower selves. Right? When that balance is struck between the higher and lower self, you're demonstrating the unity of Allah, and you reach the stage of fruition, which the Prophet refers to as deific life. That's when man becomes God. And that, and there's a word. I'm gonna say this, and I'll yield the floor. There is a mural in Washington D.C. in the state Capitol building. When you go in the state Capitol building, you go into the main lobby and look directly up under the dome, the rotunda area. And when you look up in the inside of the dome, there's a mural, inside the dome, and the name of that particular mural is the Apotheosis of George Washington. And the word apotheosis, which is Apotheosis, the word apotheosis means to become God. So in that mural, it's basically, the title would basically be George Washington becoming God, right? So ones try to act like, an individual actualizing their own divinity is foreign, or it's cultish, or it's a strange or foreign thought, but it's all over the place. It was demonstrated by the European nations by way of studying the science of the ancient Moors, who were the living gods that they came in contact with. All right, and with that, I'll yield the floor.
Islam, definitely gratitude for that. And you went into the aspect of the higher self and the lower self, mentioned in our Holy Quran Circle 7 about uniting divinity and matter,
Islam, boy.
which definitely ties into the union of the higher and the lower self.
Yes, sir.
I just want to let you know the time where you had some distortion, so work with it on my side, but I just want you to be mindful of that. The last time
Yes, sir.
you were speaking, there was a little distortion. I can hear you clearly now, though.
Okay, great.
So I want to talk on the following chapter, if you can expound on it, and I'm just going to read a section of it. This is chapter 4,
Okay.
the law of the many, and you definitely touched on some things just a while ago, but I like this warning that you give in the very beginning. You said, warning, this section is for the open-minded,
Yes, sir.
of heart, is zealot. One read this portion with a mind state that may contain anything your preacher, imam, rabbi, or religious leader may have told you. Appeal to the
Yes, sir.
scientists, regardless of the direction it may lead. In this section, we will split hairs. Our Islamic brethren needs no apology. And then you go on to say that there is no spook God, plasmic God with a long beard in a specific place, waiting to judge you for your sins. And you spoke about that just earlier. But
Yes, sir.
I definitely would like for you, for those who may be like kind of perplexed by that, even that title, Allah the One, Allah the Many, like what are you talking about, brother?
Yes, sir. If I may, there's a word that that's in English, but it comes through ancient Eastern thought, and the term is contemplative. The contemplative is a person that's involved in meditative practices and spends their time, as our prophet instructs, reflection is the business of man, and a sense of his state, his first duty. So our forefathers, being the founders of the first, the world's first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth, they spent thousands and thousands of years pondering certain concepts. And they'd reached a point, and you can tell this by way of the literature that they produced. When I say literature, I mean, it's not just the Quran of Mecca, or the Israelite texts, the Bibles, and so on, so on and so forth. Or the East Indian texts, the Mahabharata or the Upanishads and all this. But in all of these texts, common thing that runs through is that the divine, the aspect of the divine that we call life, or that life force, can be found in all things. This is the energy, that brought these things into the realm of the manifest. It couldn't exist if it didn't have that energy as a part of it. I remember talking to my youngest son when he was really young. He's 10, about to be 11 now. But when we were young, we were talking about the ministry of death. And, I explained to him that when I first seen, a body laying in a coffin, how I was in denial that was even the person, because it just looked like a wax statue. And if, when I thought back of how, when the person was quote unquote alive, it was actually the spirit, that animated the body. And it was the spirit that identified with as the particular name that I called that form, So if, that there not being an ectoplasmic God in a specific place, and me saying that there's with some, that's coming from the fact that many translators of the Quran of Mecca, because if you're dealing with, Muslims from America, most of their Islam that they understand comes from translations from people who, were, either spoke the language of Arabic well and spoke English well and translated over, or spoke one or the other well and translated the other one according to their understanding. Or that there was a political reason for explaining things a certain way. And a lot of times it ends up being the political reasoning, because if humanity, period, man and woman, were to realize that their divinity was in themselves, or like one of our ancient masters said, that, the helping hand that you're looking for is at the end of your own arm, or that, a beggar nation cannot attain the heights of spirituality, and that we must be industrious. If humanity were to realize that, they wouldn't wait for their freedom. To participant, amongst the nations of the earth, demonstrating their highest ideal, which one's called religion, their highest ideal in the plane of the manifest, to bring heaven upon the earth, or whatever your concept of heaven is upon the earth. You see, so, we do not accept that, as Moorish American Muslims, we do not accept that, heaven is a place, that you go to after you die. In Arabic, they use the term in the Quran of Mecca of Jannah, right? The word Jannah just means garden or paradise, okay? It's no strange happening that when you look at the golden age civilizations that our forefathers established, time and even comparable to now, they were forms of paradise in that day and time that the surrounding nations had never seen. So they brought their concept of what or how paradise or that Jannah or that heaven was described and created it on earth. Okay. And that's what our forefathers were known for. Anytime the word Moorish is mentioned throughout the annals of history, it's always mentioned with a lofty thought. And it's because our forefathers brought the realm of spirit into the plane of the manifest. All right. So we don't believe in a spook God. If one is living the life according to the 5 highest principles known to man, which are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, returned to us by the Prophet Noble Ali. If you were manifesting that daily and living the life accordingly, people will see Allah in you, and like your skin will glow and your eyes will be bright and people will be attracted to you. And the unconscious Asiatic, a lot of times when they see that on you, the magnetism, kicks up, and then they're drawn to you. And one of the first things they ask you, are you Muslim? Are you Muslim? Now, I'm in Atlanta, I say, are you Muslim? And they automatically attribute that pure look, which they call in Arabic nur or light. They attribute that with being Muslim. You see, and that thought was established by our forefathers because they lived such a manifested godly lifestyle, like walking as divinities, which gives another thought to the, when it mentions in the Jewish Psalms, walk not in the counsel of the ungodly. In other words, don't roll with people that's not gods. You see what I'm saying? So it's
Right.
like Raleigh was establishing. He was establishing, you know, like a new order upon the earth of people that would be active in government that had the mind state of gods. You see, and that's what's missing from government, and that needs to be at the table when decisions are being made and negotiated regarding government, because that thought is not present, and it's not present because the Moors have slouched under their duty. You see, so that's our position, right, to what's mentioned in the book about there not being this place called heaven, which the Prophet Noble Drew in the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America does a much better job than I could of explaining that. But that section again being inspired by the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I yield the floor.
Islam, indeed, indeed, and I like how you said how you can see Allah. So basically,
Yes,
in the
sir.
essence, manifested in human flesh.
Islam. Well,
Um,
may I read a section
I,
that I think might help that point a little?
yes, yes, Islam, yes, absolutely.
Okay, I like to draw from a book. It's known as a Buddhist Bible, and it's edited by Dwight Goddard, Goddard, a Buddhist Bible edited by Dwight Goddard, which is a compilation of writings from the disciples of the Prophet Buddha. And I mentioned the term earlier, which was contemplative, and I also drew from the creation and fall of man, where it talks about man is not the body nor the soul, but he is a spirit and part of Allah. Well, we have to wonder then, or contemplate, or reflect on, why we incarnated in these physical forms, and this thought was, dealt with by the disciples of the Prophet Buddha, from the lessons that Buddha imparted. And this section is entitled "The Contemplation of the Body," and it says, "But how does the disciple dwell in the contemplation of the body? There, the disciple retires to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to a solitary place, and sits himself down with legs crossed, body erect, and with attentiveness fixed before him. With attentive mind, he breathes in. With attentive mind, he breathes out. A long inhalation, he knows. I make a long inhalation. When making a long exhalation, he knows I make a long exhalation. When making a short inhalation, he knows I make a short inhalation. When making a short exhalation, he knows I make a short exhalation. Clearly perceiving the entire breath, body, I will breathe out. Thus he trains himself. Calming this bodily function, I will breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Calming his bodily function, I will breathe out. Thus he trains himself. Thus he dwells in contemplation of the body, either with regard to his own person or to other persons or to both. He beholds how the body arises, beholds how it passes away, beholds the arising and passing away of the body. A body is there. This clear consciousness is present in him because of his knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the body. And it just goes on, but the point that is driving home is the fact that, man has begun to think that he himself is the body, because he and she has never been taught, about the active principle within themselves. As a mystic once taught me that, do an exercise where you stare into a mirror, right? And while staring in the mirror, if you stare long enough and kind of empty yourself and calm your vibration down, you will feel yourself, your true self, looking out through your eyes. So you won't think, that you are the face and the eyes and the nose and all of that, but you actually feel yourself looking out through the vehicle of the eyes, to receive the interpretation of that image back, saying that to myself. But there's an inner awareness that you'll become aware of through the concept of reflection and contemplation. So, again, and when Prophet Noble Drew tells us or instructs us that we honor all true and divine prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, and puts four prophets together that normally would not have been mentioned together, right? He's giving you, degrees of learning, degrees of study, because each one of them had a degree, that could take our deific will to the next level. You see? So, this explaining of Prophet Noble Drew Ali in a mundane level only, or the Moorish Science Temple of America, which is Man Know Thyself, and from a mundane aspect only, or the Moorish Divine National Movement from a mundane aspect only, actually does our movement a disservice, because there's so much more, but ones have to be willing to come in and be taught and instructed, and be consistent with unfolding their lessons. I yield the floor.
Islam, indeed, definitely. That's a great demonstration. That in that book again, this I got it. Definitely, you want to check that out. I did post that link on the chat.
Praise Allah.
Now, praise Allah. I want to go into something that you mentioned in that chapter one, Allah the Many,
Yes, sir.
in reference to the and the forces or energies. Now, it brought to mind in chapter 7, it explains us about force. Force is the will of Allah and is omnipotent, and power that's directed by the breath. And you also just mentioned about the breath.
Yes, sir.
Basically, go into that as far as the collective energy and the subordinate energies, and how does that play into how we as Moors see Allah.
Islam. Well, again, drawing from the teachings of Buddha, because that is indeed a part of what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali returned to us. There's a teaching in the ancient East Indian tradition known as prana. And prana is the life force, right? So clearly, as we're doing this interview, and for those listening, we're inhaling, we're exhaling, we're breathing in and out. Science has told us that we're inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon monoxide, dioxide, carbon dioxide, right? Dioxide, thank you. And but there's also within this so-called air that we're breathing other elements, nitrogen, so on and so forth, right? But that on the other aspect, preceding the hydrogen, which is the first element, preceding that, the things that there's an elemental chart that leads up. There's a spiritual elemental chart that leads up to be able to create even the hydrogen atom, and that's the etheric side, right? And much of what we're inhaling, right, is the aspect of what what the East Indians call prana, which Prophet referred to as ether, which in Taoism they might refer to as chi, but it's this all-pervading life force energy that surrounds, and basically creates and sustains life, right? In understanding of Allah, right? The Quran of Mecca mentions, it says Allah is the best of names. Then it gives us subordinate attributes known as sifat, which is S-I-F-A-T, and these are attributes. And they say Allah has 99 plus 1 attributes, and the mysticism 99 plus 1 denotes infinity. But there's 91. Then there's literally 99 names, and then there's a mystical name known to those who practice the esoteric side. And these 99 attributes plus 1 give the mystical energies. An example, like the very concept that we're using of the term ether, right? There's an Arabic attribute known as al-latifu, and al-latifu means like the subtle energies, the subtle ethers. You know what I'm saying? Like there can be you could be just in reflection and like a wave of an energy will come through of happiness, and in the midst of your meditation you might just smile, you know what I'm saying? Or a wave of sadness might come through, apparent what we call sadness. And because that energy, because we're on a planet with like 7 billion people, and there's various different thoughts that we have that permeate and ride those ethers. So we're subject to that which is around us as well, not to mention the entire universe that's inside of ourselves. You understand what I'm saying? So, yes, there is, the Allah, the grand Allah, that absolute, that which we refer to, like when we do, we're in a celebratory observance, and in our Islamic tradition, and when we celebrate, we might say Allahu Akbar, right? And the word Akbar, coming from the word Kabir, people translate, Allah Akbar means Allah, He is the greatest. But the word Akbar comes from the word Kabir, which means bigger or older than, right? So that's Allah as that absolute that's bigger or older or more ancient than anything we can conceive of, all right? But those inner attributes, what I'm saying, can be demonstrated by all of us, right? Because we all, stem from that absolute, hence the term, Ibn, the adopted son, or Banat, which is, adopted daughter, or like when Jesus said that, our Father which art in heaven prayer. When you look at that, in the languages, Abana Alladhi fi Samawati, the word Abana, meaning our Father, the word they're using there is Abba, which is that adopted father again, right? But these, the lower level subtle attributes, is, the residual energies left over after the initial creation, as the ethers, as is covered in the creation of fall of man, of how, when the initial creation, started, and the energy started slowing down in vibration, and thus, the various different, were created, like the soul plane and the carnal plane, and down all the way down to the carnal plane, when that initial spirit began to take on coarser garbs of flesh. All right, but in that spiritual aspect, the spiritual aspect was the initial cause. We say the causeless cause and the rootless root. Before that fall, if we can say, there was nothing to compare anything to. As everything began to slow down in vibration, now we have comparison. Now we have duality. Now we have polarity. So on and so forth. Now we have these hermetic laws, because for every plane of existence, there has to be a law to govern it. So there's a law that governs the spirit plane, a law that governs the soul plane, a law that governs the carnal plane, so on and so forth. Hence prophets to come to tell us, to remind us of these laws, because the further we get from the absolute, apparently, because that's an illusion, right? Because we are part of the absolute, but apparently in our comprehension getting further away, the more finite and carnalized our perception becomes. You see, so yes, there is a grand absolute, and there are subtle energies, and those subtle energies are known in different languages as well. In the terms of referring to them almost as deities. So you get the term Elohim, which according to the Elohim, according to the Hebrew forefathers, it said that these are ones that created everything that ever was, is, or ever more to be, right? Amongst the tradition in West Africa known as Ifa, they refer to these as the 7 African powers. You know what I'm saying? Every, different culture, the Neteru for Egypt, the Kachina for certain Native American groups, so on and so forth, have the names for these deities that brought forth creation, and so on and so forth. So that's the, evolution from the absolute that gave birth to all the way down to what we have now as, as the carnal plane. So yes, there's the grand absolute, and yes, there are those subtle energies that we go into in the book. Also, too, if I may add, while we're on that subject, is that there's a section in the book where we go into and we start describing the religion of Ifa, and kind of introducing it. And the reason why we did that was because 2008, when I first authored this book, there was a lot of Moorish American Muslims that I knew, temples to go to what are referred to as ilays, to go practice, this religion of Ifa, because, they wanted that connection to an African, quote unquote, African form of spirituality. And I didn't understand why Moors were leaving, like, the Prophet to go study an ancient African tradition, when what the Prophet brought us, he brought us Allah's art. So what we have all. So I went into, how, the Prophet's lessons, and started looking at, really, okay, if you get into Elohim, what really is it? Folded, and I was like, wait a minute. What they're calling the Orisha over in Ifa, we have in, the Prophet's teachings as Elohim. So, I kind of, that section of the book was kind of, my way of, offering, like a lifeline to ones that felt as though they had to leave the temple to go get any form of spirituality. Nothing wrong with extending the learning, but you can stay in the temple and get that. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of, what that section was for. And it wasn't us trying to oversimplify, the spiritual practice of another organized group, but kind of to, to do a parallel. And I actually took, about, close to 2 years and studied under 2 Babalawos. The word Babalawo means father of the secret, but they're like the priests in the religion of Ifa, to actually study with them so I could be, genuine with how I represented, the Orisha inside of the Who is Allah to the Moors book. So for those who are interested in the religion of Ifa and, kind of interested in the Moors but don't see how they connect, read, obtain the book Who is Allah to the Moors. We do an interesting study, contrasting the two. I yield the floor.
Yes, sir. I agree. In that section, matter of fact, a lot of the one, a lot of many, that you definitely go into that and on that. And this, you actually answered someone's question on the chat, but I'm gonna actually ask the question again.
Okay, praise Allah.
And I'll just add more to it. The question is related to the word Elohim. So I will ask you, is Allah related to the word Elohim? And what is the relationship between Allah and the word Elohim?
Yes. One of the the disingenuous practices that Arab and Pakistani translators, and I think I need to address that too. Many of the translations of the Quran of Mecca are coming out of Pakistan and not Arabia. Matter of fact, one of the early translations of the Quran of Mecca, which was the Muhammad Pickthall translation, actually, well, no, not the Pickthall, the Maulana Muhammad Ali translation, excuse me, actually came out of Pakistan, and the Pakistanians, they have a language that they speak called Urdu, and Urdu looks like Arabic, but it's not Arabic. They have letters in that language. Or in that script that are not in the 28, Arabic letter system, and they have their national language that they speak. They actually speak, a language that's indigenous to where they're from in Pakistan, which is basically India that the British divided. But they took, the Arabic script and kind of parlayed over that and added, certain letters to it to kind of make it their own. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because when they translate over, they don't, you got to understand, these translators, they don't read the Torah because they say that the Torah is tampered with. They don't read the book of, the books of the prophets, which, because you have the Tanakh or the Torah, and you have the Ketubim, the Nubian, which the books of what translators call the major and minor prophets. And then, you have the Injil, like a book of Revelations, so on and so forth. But these translators don't read these texts because they say they're tampered with, right? So as a result of them not reading them, they don't understand that what you have as the Quran of Mecca and the terms that are brought in there are merely just a continuation of what was brought before. In fact, the Quran of Mecca says of itself, if you doubt, what's being revealed to you, go back to that which came before you. It says that in and of itself. But relative to the question, to the word Allah and Elohim, these translators will tell you that Allah cannot be made into a plural linguistically. And this is not true because in the Quran of Mecca, they use the term Allahumma. And Allahumma is Allah in the sense of multiple Allahs. Okay? Why would it use that term Allahumma? And Allahumma is spelled A-L-L, if you were to translate it into English, A-L-L-A-H-U-M-A, Allahumma. Or if you were doing it in Arabic, it would be Alif, Lam, Ha, and Meen, right? But this is Allah in a plural. Why does it have Allah in a plural? Because when it talks about various different things, about example, like the we and us in creation, right? In Arabic, it uses the term Allahumma, right? And this is a continuation of Old Testament, Torah, when it uses the term in the book of Bereshith called Genesis, called Elohim, which is the term Elah, and which is, Aleph, Lamet, and Ha, as a, or A-L, A-L-A-H, or E-L-O-A-H, depending on how you want to do it, as a plural. Okay, so this is the concept of the one, but these are like these seven spirits and went forth that further continued creation. They are the we and the us in creation. All right, and these are the ones that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that, it says who made devil, and the answer was Elohim. Well, how did Elohim make devil? Well, as soon as you start, as soon as you take and create or put or contain that, that pure spirit and encase it into a carnal body, it creates that conflict. Like the Prophet makes that statement in the creation fall of man, then the conflict came. right? And that's when, the incarnation into the physical, all right? And, the devil, just meaning adversary, this is this, this body, or this foe that we must fight in order to overcome and actualize our own inner divinity. You see what I'm saying? So yes, Allah does exist in the plural as, as Allahumma, because the plural aspect of that would be hum, which would be the ha and the meme in Arabic, or in Hebrew would be the yad and the meme, that een sound. Those are the, the letters or the conjugation that would make it a plural terminology. You see, and so again, we'd have to study all of the works of our forefathers to not allow foreigners to lie to us. To give us an Islam that is tantamount to Christianity. You see, and this is why the mentality is out when people are saying, "Oh, well, Islam was created by the Vatican. It was created by Christianity, so on and so forth." Well, it's because the understanding that ones are taking on, as Muslims today, they're getting from people who want to, put them in their own controllable aspect of Islam, which ends up paralleling and looking like Christianity and being external and outside of yourself, right? But our forefathers have never handed us anything that, that couldn't empower us, spiritually, mentally, physically. So yes, to be more concise, yes, Allah can be found in the plural as the word Allahumma, which is the same as the word Elohim. I yield the floor.
Islam. Definitely gratitude for that. Ask you, because you went into the aspect we spoke about earlier.
Yes, sir.
How man, the soul, he's a spirit and a part of Allah. So
Yes,
we know that we have our brothers and sisters who break down it, and it's great that people are listening to you, not only from of 7, but also you're getting into the language.
Yes, sir.
What is your take for brothers and sisters who say just means arm, leg, arm, head?
It's funny you mention that. We actually have a section of the book that deals with that. And it's towards the end of the book. It's in the last chapter. And I believe it is in chapter 9. Okay, if we were to go to page, just be patient with me.
Sorry.
Okay. If we were to go, hold on, please. Let me start with the acronym I, Self, Law, and Master. Can I start with that, Moor? Islam, Moor?
Islam, sir.
Okay. All right. So we have, various different groups, referring to themselves as Moorish. Okay. And as if, I understand. I get the spirit. The spirit that they have is they want to distance themselves from Arab culture and tradition, because the history between the Moors and the Arabs hasn't always been, a pristine one. Even if we look at, right now, the slavery that's going on in Libya, what I'm saying, with the Africans from various different nations at the hands of the Arab stock in Libya, which is a whole nother conversation. But it just hasn't always been that good. And so ones have created these systems and these semantic breakdowns to say, well, okay, well, but my Islam is I, Self, Law, and Master. Okay, and every free group has a right to create like their own cosmology, their own approach to spirituality, so on and so forth. But what I would suggest, and again, this is my general opinion. I profit instructs general opinion offers no proof of truth. But if you're going to proclaim your nationality to be a Moor, you have to be kind of versed on a lot of different areas. So if you're going to use a word that's Islam or the word Allah, right, that can be found in a language that's called Arabic, and even the mere fact that they call it Arabic, that's that's nationalism. That's them propping themselves up to say that the language that was spoken in ancient times, we're taking control of it. We're going to put our free national name on it and call it Arabic. But that language was spoken by the ancient Moabites, ancient Canaanites, so on and so forth. Going the word Allah, even going all the way back to the Akkadian word Ilu, which is ILU. So all these terms are very ancient terms. But in the modern day, these ones will say, I self, law, and master. So in the book, Who is Allah to the Moors, starting on page 135, I state, my fellow Moors of northwestern Mexico, in their efforts to distance themselves from the East, have created an acronym out of the word Islam in order to state their own claim to the science. Every man and woman has a divine right to worship under their own vine and fig tree in their own way. However, this offers us no excuse to segregate ourselves from the divine creed of our forefathers and the methods that they have dealt with the said creeds. The same Moorish forefathers who were devout Muslims studied the same sciences we Moors study today, and in many areas were more advanced. The acronym of which I speak is Islam, which means I, self, law, and master. And that's I period, S period, L period, A period, M period. This acronym is represented by 5 emblems that represent each letter, and these emblems are, and I go in to break down how these ones will, to present, their explanation of our self, law, and master. All right. And then we compare that, because one thing about ancient science, ancient science was based on mathematics. Like example, the language that's being presently called Arabic, people don't realize that's, it's not just a language, it's also a mathematics system. There's a science known as abjad, where each Arabic letter has a number equivalent, attached to it. So you can actually literally add verses up. You take a particular verse and it'll give a certain number. This is how ones found out that in the Quran of Mecca there was a mathematic code that was based upon the number 19. Ones also did this with the Torah and found out that the same thing took place for every Hebraic letter. There was a number equivalent. And there was a science that ones are presently calling gematria, which is just geo and metric, which is earth measurement. But these ancient systems were also mathematic systems. So in our discarding of ancient systems, trying to be so scienced up, we're actually throwing away ancient, mathematical science. You see, so like a common phrase that's used is you throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right, so I would suggest ones will obtain the book and go into that section, where it explains, it's a decent breakdown. It would be too lengthy to get into now because it's very long, but where it goes into breaking down that I, self, law, and master, and we get into that arm, leg, arm, head, to really ones are trying to explain it from an ancient perspective, showing that our forefathers have already dealt with internal divinity. You don't have to, adopt a new system based on English semantics in order to, to say the same thing your forefathers have already said. I yield the floor.
Islam, indeed, definitely gratitude for that, because everyone has their personal right to spirituality the way they see it. But like you
Absolutely.
said, it is clear that when we look at the word Allah as well as other words, there is a connection to a language.
Yes, sir.
It's not English. So
no, sir.
we clear on that.
And may I interject?
Yes, sir.
Islam. Okay.
Islam.
The Prophet Noble Rally in his, bringing everything to us, we have to pay attention because, again, he taught according to science. And, you'd have to ask yourself, like our Moorish American prayer, Allah starts off Allah, the Father of the universe. But he takes the time to introduce the word Allah, right? He could have said God, the Father of the universe, but he took the time to specifically say Allah, okay? Why did he introduce that to us? Why did he give us the word Islam? Why did he give us the word Muslim? Why did he give us the word Quran? All these words are words that come from a language called Arabic, okay? In Moorish literature, he gives us an article entitled Caveat Emptor, right? Caveat Emptor is Latin. That article could have been entitled, which is the definition of it, let the buyer beware. He could have said that. He very well could have stated, let the buyer beware, which would have been, like prima facie evidence. Okay, that's clear. Like, okay, let the buyer beware and just go in. But he said, no, caveat emptor. Why? Because he's saying, like he's also been on record to say, or a statement that's been attributed to him, that if I could get you to thinking, you'd save yourself. So and he gave us the word Elohim, which is Hebrew, right? So we had Arabic, Hebrew over here, Latin over here, and that's not only a Latin term, that's a Latin legal maxim. So he's giving you all these different disciplines and languages, but it's up for us to to unfold them. This is not a thing where he handed you everything on a silver platter and you don't have any work to do. No, you have plenty of work to do, and he took it all and put it in a scientific format for us to unfold it, and gave us the formula to unfold it. So I just wanted to just to document that for the record.
Absolutely.
As well. I yield the floor.
That, Sheik. Yes, sir. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that language does, particularly our language.
Yes, sir.
Speaks the tone.
Yes, sir.
In our Holy Quran, Circle 7.
Yes, sir.
The higher tone.
Yes, sir.
I notice there's a section,
mm-hmm.
and I'm going to page 110,
mm-hmm.
where it speaks about as you mentioned about Eli and Elu, but
mm-hmm.
you also went into the Moorish cosmology, and then you went into the octaves.
Yes, sir.
Voice of Allah.
Yes, sir.
Etc. So, just for the listening audience, people in the chat, could you expound in reference to the relationship between tone, the word Allah,
mm-hmm.
the other words that you find in Arabic as well as Hebrew, etc.? What's
yes,
the significance?
Absolutely. So basically, what you would be dealing with is, the concept of vibration, because everything in the universe, and again, going to the Hermetic principles, you have the principle of vibration. Everything in the universe vibrates. Okay. Now the thing is, you'll notice that when the European nations, grabbed a hold of the Asiatic sciences, they grabbed what they could and what they could comprehend, because we have to remember that your ancient forefathers established various different orders to initiate certain ones in according to their understanding, and once they showed certain proficiency in certain areas, they graduated to the next grade or the next degree. All of that was created by our forefathers, who were the ancient masters, who looked and saw certain ones and said, what, he has a proficiency in, let's say, this aspect of science, put him with this master over here and let him unfold and see, and judge him accordingly, right? But what they noticed amongst the European nations is that, they have a hard time like unfolding, the wisdom of our forefathers, because much of this stuff is melanin based, and melanin being the active chemical which not only coats the skin, but also the brain, spinal cord, all of your cells, all of that. It controls the way you think. It gives you the ability to be able to channel, wisdom that humanity doesn't even know. How many prophets have come and revealed a particular thing that may have sounded crazy in their time, but turned out to be true later. You know what I'm saying? This is the thing that our ancient forefathers were doing. We were trying to give the European nations these particular things, because, and again, let me pause and address that. Why were the Moors giving the European nations certain sciences? Well, everybody that's on Earth, because we do things for the sake of humanity, and everybody that's on Earth needs a certain degree of civilization. If not, it makes it hard for those civilizers and those civilized ones that are on the planet. So, we gave them certain sciences. We didn't give them everything. We gave them certain sciences. But yeah, so relative to the ancient tones of Arabic and Hebrew and Amharic, Ge'ez, Sanskrit, all these ancient tones, right? There's a vibration of energy that a lot of times you'll find out that these are what we call in scriptures were collectively chanted. They weren't just read like we read Bibles today. They would get together for a particular purpose in circles, and chant, or like we have an Arabic word, dhikr, which the word dhikr, if you would transliterate it into English, you would have uh, D-H-I-K, D-H-I-K-R, dhikr. And this dhikr, where dhikr means remembrance, right? And we would get together and chant particular things. Like if a person was sick, we could chant a particular chant, and we notice with a certain chant being chanted, at a certain speed, or let's say if it was fast, then we or would slow it down, depending on what we were trying to, working to achieve. That person, we could, elevate the temperature in their body to eradicate the sickness. Or like we have a forefather named Zuriyad, whose full name was Abu Hassan Ali ibn Nafal, around the year like 800 AD in Moorish Spain. He was amongst other things, he was a musician, and he was known to be able to take people and take what was called in ancient times as the lute, or even nowadays called the oud, which was an ancient form of a guitar, and place the guitar or that lute over that person's body and strum certain notes and sing certain octaves of sound and eradicate mucus from people's body through sound therapy and stuff like this. So, again, what we're calling, in our concept of religion today is a far cry from what our ancient forefathers demonstrated, because it was an entire scientific lifestyle. All right. So in what we're calling Islam or Islamism, because you have to be clear, before the Prophet Muhammad of Arabia, there was no name for the way of life that the ancient ones practiced. What was the way of life that the biblical patriarchs, that Adam practiced? What did Abraham practice? What was the name of it? What was that which Moses practiced? And it wasn't Judaism. That was created by, pale Jews. You see? So there was no name for that one practice. It was just what we did. It was our way of life. But during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, around that time, if you look at what was going on in world history around that time, the Romans were doing a lot of invasions. So what we did was we took and, Allah put in the Prophet Muhammad's heart to call that the ancient system Islam, that way of peace, which the Prophet Noble Drew Ali referred to the Prophet Muhammad as the founder of the uniting of Islam. You see, because he didn't found Islam, he founded the uniting of it from the ancient realm under that particular name. But its practice was indeed ancient. And the chanting of these various different tones, which is something that's practiced amongst, let's say, a group called the Sufi, right? And the Sufis are a group of Islamic mystics that take the esoteric verses in the Quran and gather certain, what we refer to as dhikr circles, and do particular chants to raise their consciousness and vibration to a higher tone. You see, that's that tone that the Prophet spoke of. So there's an aspect of, of these names, of these languages and everything that's on a much higher vibratory rate than what people practice on a daily. You see, and even on the European side of what they're calling New Age thought, with Madame Blavatsky and Gurdjieff and Aleister Crowley, which I don't really like advise anyone to practice. Like I say, I would suggest, you can read it, but don't practice that stuff, because that was founded for them for their earthly salvation. But study it, and what you'll find is they were quoting Asiatic sources, and based on their understanding, they sought to create these various different chants. Example, there's a language that was created called Enochian by the New Age thought groups, based on chants that they created based off what they could, they had heard Asiatics say, but tried to pronounce, but the pronunciations are all off, which means, if you chant that stuff as a melanated being, it could actually harm you as opposed to help you. So these are just things to understand. So that's why you always go back to your forefathers and get their understanding of a thing before you begin to deal with it. I yield the floor.
Islam. Gratitude for that. Definitely, you broke down some serious stuff with that tone. I want to it's interesting because what you just said, it made me reflect on. And again, this is by anyone, it's an observation.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to find that tend to study us, those
Mm-hmm.
of us with melanin,
Yes,
and they always seem to be late.
Absolutely. Johnny come lately. Right.
I actually overheard a young European woman talk about she was gonna go to the club And I was like, ain't that from the
Groove.
70s? Like, I was like, we don't
I
even
heard that's
say that
about
anymore.
78. Exactly.
Exactly. So it just lets you know, like, we are always as melanated people on the cusp of what is to be, and they actually see. I want to
So,
tell the people a particular chant.
mm,
I'm gonna say it because I
mm,
know it's powerful. I know you
mm,
and I know
mm,
from our sources how powerful this is. So,
absolutely.
family, if you can hear me, and pronounce it, and then I'll spell it out. I'll even type it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Hu ya
Mm-hmm.
min la mahu. Okay, again, that's Yahoo Yahoo ya min la
Mm-hmm.
ya alamu mahu ilahu.
Yes,
That's
sir.
oh who he who no one knows except he. And I'm telling
If I
you
may,
from a person. Yes.
if I might make more, please, people together, in a pure, these people might have fasted maybe 3 days prior. You don't want to just go into something like this. Fasted 3 days
Right.
prior, you know, um, wearing the colors of the rulers of the land, all white,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
um, you know, mind, focused on that which is pure and holy, and to hear them get together and, as the brother, revealed the chant that Yahoo, Yahoo, Yamin la, Ya'alamu Mahu illahu. Yahoo, Yahoo, Yamin la, Ya'alamu Mahu illahu. Like you hear it, you get a group of people doing that. And the irony of it, right, is that we hear that language is Arabic, but when you hear it done in group, it also sounds quote unquote Native American, like the
Hmm.
Native American chants. It's the same energy, the same vibration that we were doing on both sides of the Atlantic. You see? So don't let ones tell you that this is some far off, this is something from Arabia. Man, we've been doing this stuff globally. There's another one. Huwa alladhi la ilaha illa huwa. So huwa alladhi la ilaha illa huwa. 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 Like you get that, and that's just, he is who, there is none, no other except he. But you get a group of people just all bearing witness to that one single absolute reality. You open portals. Nothing spooky, but you'll be able to invoke. These were called like invocations. Like if you, depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, what you're trying to do? You're trying to build your own community. Well, you need to coordinate. The energies of the people that are present that are laboring towards that task. So what better way than to get them together in a circle and chant the names of the one absolute reality, so that way when they go forward, everybody's in the same mind. Like example, like you know, you look at the ancient scriptures always point to nature, to reveal things to us. So you look in the sky, you see a flock of birds, and they're moving in unison. You never see one bird be like, "Hey y'all, let's go this way." Nah, it's like they all in one mind. Whether they bank right, they all go right. They bank left, they all go left. They all go south for the winter. And it's no like, y'all think we should go? No, I don't think we should go. No, it's one mind that this is what we do. You see, the ants, the bees, one bee traveling 24,896 miles in a day, that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And all of them working for that collective hive to keep the hive as one, as a jamia or a community. But you know that aspect of that inner circle, and it even says, when, and I don't want to go too far with this, but in our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that when a group of brothers came to get the body of the Nazarene, these ones marched and counter marched. You know what I'm saying? And but it says they uttered not a word. But there's even a way to do these things where you chant it without saying it, but everybody's on the same thought, and thought is the cause of it all. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So these are all things. Noble Drew Ali brought us all of this. And all of this is in our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. It's all there. Sorry, Mo. When you mentioned that chant, Mo, I kind of got excited.
Oh,
I yield
praise
the floor.
Allah. Islam, praise
Praise
Allah.
Allah. Sorry about that, Mo.
No need to apologize, because when I saw that in the book, I got excited. So definitely, I was like, yes, yes,
Yeah, you don't forget stuff
yes.
like that, Mo.
No, never, ever. That's a part of you for life,
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's confirmed. It's confirmed in our so all events.
That's right.
That's key. That's definitely key. I want to speak on something, because we definitely going on high. I want to talk about the abjad
Yes, sir.
earlier. So um, you did speak about it. I want
Hmm.
you to if you can go into in relationship the abjad in relation to the word Islam.
Okay.
Is that
So I
is
think, pardon, sir. Hold on, please.
153.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Okay. 150. You sure that's 153 more?
what I have in my book
Okay.
is
Could you start reading the first sentence for me, please, so I can key into where you're at?
if the numerical values of each letter comprising the word Islam,
Okay, hold on, please. 150.
or maybe
Yeah, I don't have that in 153. But could you just please read it for me, and I can elaborate.
here, if the numerical values of each letter comprising are added, one comes up sum of 132, and then you break it down. Now I noticed when you said before page 135, what you was
Hmm.
reading, I saw on printing it was 138. So maybe it's
Okay, because what probably happens is you because it's an older book and I reprinted it, so the format might be different in terms of page numbers. But I found where you're at, and I said yes, indeed. So if the numerical values of each letter comprising the word Islam are added up, one comes up with the resultant sum of 132, and it's that I, which would be the letter Aleph, which is the number one. S, which is seen, equals 60. Lam, which is L, is 30. Aleph is 1 again. And Meme, which is the M, is 40. And that equals 132. Now, and, just to go in, if I could read the next paragraph, I just, gives like a kind of breakdown on that. According to God, and this is a good reference for those that's interested in the numerical side of things, Godwin's Kabbalistic Encyclopedia. Okay. Godwin's Kabbalistic, Cabalistic Encyclopedia by David Godwin, page 519, we find under the entry of the number 132 that the number 132 is a harmonic name of Muhammad, as well as the Arabic word qalb, which means heart. 132, when simplified to a common numeral, is the number 6, which according to the previous reference on page 488 is a harmonic of the following Hebrew words: the word Abba, which is the supernal father, and the word Ha, meaning lo or behold. Islam is an expression of the heart, dwelling place of Allah, for all to behold. Not the religion started in Arabia in the year 610 AD, starting from Prophet Muhammad's first revelation at age 40, 570 to 610 AD, but instead the natural civilized way for all Asiatics of the planet, Quran of Mecca 3030. Muhammad is the principle of law and order, of how to chisel harmony out of the chaos of the oblong square, the celestial lodge, the cosmos, of how to transform the terrestrial globe into the celestial globe. So basically, that is how your forefathers, when they said the word Islam, those are the concepts that came up, okay, because they understood the principal numbers, that the vibration or the tone represented. You see,
all right.
and that's the interesting thing about, you don't just call yourself, let's say, speaking of self, because if divinity starts internally, and we say charity begins at home, you don't want to just name yourself anything. You know, generally you don't want to just name yourself. You want to go to those who know law, and let them, offer you a name based on your energies, right? Because whatever you call yourself, you're going to take on the attributes of that name. You see, and so it's the same thing. So you know, I've never done it, but it has to be interesting to do the numerical equivalence of the word God and to see what that adds up to, or the word Jesus, and to see what that adds up to, in terms of the mentality of our people, or the word Christ, and see what that adds up to. Like, we're only a couple weeks out from December 25th, and we know what Asiatics are going to do in terms of spending relative to December 25th, because they're caught under a word or a tone or an ideal, right? And that harmony behind that ideal is governing their very existence, right? Well, one of the first things the prophet told you got to do is proclaim your nationality, because by proclaiming your nationality, you're taking on the word Moor is an ancient tone. And for those think that the word Moor is coming from the Greek and all this type of stuff, the Greeks ain't old enough to have named us, right? And you're not going to, first of all, and then number two, you're not going to tell me that the ancient masterful Moors who brought civilization to the uncivilized was going to allow a people that didn't have a civilization to name them. So that just doesn't even bear out, common sense wise. But but that tone and that vibration, the abjad and the gematria, you have to put those together. The abjad and gematria, from the Arabic and the Hebrew side, and knowing that the abjad has two systems, not just one. There's the Egyptian and the Moroccan systems of abjad, which that's a major key in terms of who was moving and shaking in the ancient world. The ancient Moors and ancient Egypt, which the Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian science. So it's no strange happening. So I'm telling you, like, when the prophet, revealed the word Moor to us, he opened, and I hate to use a Greek reference, but he opened Pandora's box, and because, by revealing that word, it's so much attached to that word, and it is the key to everything else, whether it's this paradigm or others. So all praises be to Allah for sending us, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to raise us up from, the lowly state of being Negro, black, and colored without the knowledge of ourselves. Praise Allah.
Praise Allah. Praise Allah. Yes, sir. I want to everybody get this book. I posted the link.
Praise Allah.
Yes. Go to .com. That's ALHAMBRA19PUB.com. Go there. You can click on the tab for books. He has a multitude of books when you really want to get. But for tonight, I'm focusing on who is Allah. I want to actually speak on. There's a section in the book, and we're actually going back a little bit in the section of the book, but we're still. This is pertaining to which speaks of spiritual parallels to the stars. So,
yes, sir.
and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a section, and then I just like for you to expound on it,
Okay.
and then so right here, Moors taught through time, break all spiritual systems with each other. There isn't a spiritual system / divine creed on the planet that cannot be parallel system. We Moors can be found in circles. One may find a Moor in a numerology circle, voodoo, Islamic, Christian, Judaic, Freemasonic, New Age, Wicca, Ifa, etc. We are not bound by the limitations of men. From there, you go on and speak about, you went into, as you mentioned about Ifa, you go into the planets. So my question is, because that as you just said, as far as the parallels, there's a lot of all these different circles, who have a ill or a bay,
Yes, sir.
and they will acknowledge that they are Moors.
Yes,
You'll
sir.
find them being, uh, as I say, they are inclined to study one particular of, or maybe multitude of these different various things. And you
Yes, sir.
kind of, some people may find it strange, but there is nothing, there are no
That's right.
happenings. Law governs all events. What would you
Islam.
say to is in reference to how Moors in almost every aspect of what we call enlightenment, some may call as consciousness.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, if I were to, to draw from, symbology, if you look at the chart of the Moorish Science Temple of America, on there is a particular emblem is the Fez headdress, and it's referred to as figure number 1. And upon proclaiming one's nationality as a man of America, Fez is the Grand Sheik, or the Grand Sheik. And when that Fez on your head, it's representing that, the capping of the pyramid, if I can say, or the willingness to complete the work, of the raising of the temple of the perfected man and woman, and all of the civilization. You know what I mean? Like the fact that if I were to go to like contemporary, I know this might sound oxymoronic, but contemporary ancient times, like, so basically if I would go like yesterday to us, and like with the founding of the University of Fez in Morocco, which is the University of El Qarawiyyin, for that university, which that and the University of Al Azhar in Egypt, again, they're the two oldest universities on earth. But the uniform for that university was the Fez headdress. And kings and rulers and sultans and from all over the planet sent their children to that university to study and sit at the feet of the Moors, to get access to these sciences. And when they went back, to their respective lands, they took that Fez headdress with them. All right. So the Fez headdress, the pedigree, and the curriculums of the ancient Moors. Like that, the book everybody knows about, and for ones that don't, please obtain it. The Golden Age of the Moors by Dr. Ivan van Sertima. When you go inside of there, they give I forget which chapter it is, but they do give a breakdown of a sample curriculum from the University of Qarawiyyin, the University of Fez. And you see like the Moors were studying all types. So they weren't just studying the Quran of Mecca. They did, obviously. But they study, again, mathematics, astrology, astronomy, cosmology, what we call now metaphysics, chemistry, what they call then alchemy, all these various different sciences and disciplines or whatever. And then, there was like these grand courtyards. And then if you like see any paintings from that era, period paintings from that era, you'll see, you'll see the sheikh, which is the sheik, right? Sitting with the students. And they would be in the grand courtyard, and they would be sharing information. So the thing was, the sheik didn't just get up and postulate. The sheik opened the floor. He would put a thought out, or the sheikha, because it was sheikesses in the ancient world they don't like to talk about. Female sheiks they don't like to talk about, but they existed. In fact, the University of Fez was founded by a sister named Fatima al-Fikhri. She was a Moorish sister. But anyway, they would open the floor, and people, because they're coming from all different parts of the world, they would explain from their understanding on that topic, all right? And it benefited the circle because a person, let's say a person might have been from the Hausa people, from what we now know as Nigeria. And they might be expounding from a Hausa perspective on that particular topic. Then you might have another person who might have been Amazigh, or what we call Berber today. And he might have been sitting down breaking down from a Berber perspective or Amazigh perspective on that topic. It might have been a person from Stan or whatever. It might have been a person from there breaking down. Well, that's interesting because in the Rig Veda it says and gives his portion of understanding. You know what I'm saying? So you know, that in the study that was taking place in that school affected the society because the Sultan in those ancient times was the patron of the university. So the Sultan would want to know, what's being conveyed by the scholars, and the scholars would come and the Sultan would sit with the scholars and learn and build up knowledge and so on and so forth. So it was always this grand exchange of culture, this cultural exchange. So it's no strange happening, like you said, brother. The law governs all events. That we being the pedigree bloodline descendants of those ancient Moors, that we do find ourselves in strange environments, so-called strange, right? Environments of, let's say, example, the average Moor is pretty adept at astrology. That's no strange happening because that's, if you go in our genealogy, that's there. The average Moor knows a little something about law, right? And I'm not talking about the folly that's being presented as law or the folly that's being presented as civics, but actual law. He knows something about constitution. He knows something about the laws of the family and nation. He knows something about international law, and can speak on it intelligently. You see?
Yes.
But again, that's all a part of our culture. You see? Like when you look at other nationalities and that particular nationality has a particular thing, particular areas that they strive in or they excel in, it's because that their forefathers established them that way. Prophet Noble Drew Ali establishing us on a Moorish foundation of salvation. It's no strange happening that we in turn end up with the same gifts and abilities. You see? So, and even the ancient Moors studied things that was considered taboo, and that was the fallout between the Moors and the Arabs. You see, because you got to remember when the Prophet Muhammad came and took Mecca back. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but it ties in. When the Prophet Muhammad came back from Medina and took Mecca, right? And the faithful came in and destroyed all the idols of the Kaaba because it was 360 idols displayed in the Kaaba, destroyed them all and stuff like that. The key thing was to bring in the concept of that oneness or whatever, but each one was allowed to still demonstrate Islam from their tribal perspectives. In other words, you didn't have to practice Islam as the Quraysh tribe, which was the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad. You didn't have to practice it as the Quraysh practiced it. You could practice it like there was a group called the Ansars, and the Muhajirun. They had particular practices that were peculiar to them. Like there were certain ones that believed that music is forbidden amongst the Arabs. But the Ansars played drums, right? And they came to the Prophet Muhammad one time. Well, what about the Ansars? They're playing music. He said, leave them alone. They like the duff, which is a particular drum that they play. So that was he was basically saying being demonstrating a degree of tolerance. You see. So and another thing about the Arabs, they were because they had lived in an idol worship sense for so long, they're scared to go back to that. So if a Moor, there were times when there were sultans that had art collections. There were sultans that had statue collections and stuff like that. And when the Arabs would come from Arabia and Damascus and all these different Baghdad and all these different areas that the Arabs had went to and dwelled in, and would come to Cordova, come to Seville or to Toledo and Spain where the Moors was, or Marrakesh or Fez or wherever, and they would see these things. They would look at the Moors like we were apostates, like we had gone back on the divine creed that was established. And it was like, no, this is a part of our culture. You don't do that, but we do. You see? So Prophet Noble Drew Ali brings that same spirit to us by one of the keys that says, what is our profit to us? He didn't just say, well, what is a prophet? So what is our prophet to us? And he's an angel, you see? But it gives that, to us, spirit that the Islamism that we practice is unique to us, and it sets us apart from the other nations of the earth. Even though we're a part of the family of nations, we have our own separate and distinct identity, which is Moorish American, and our divine creed being Muslim. I yield the floor.
Islam. Praise Allah. Gratitude for that. Yeah, that all in reference to Muslim, and we dealing with science. It's more science.
Absolutely.
So it only makes sense. It stands to reason. Like you said, you come across the average Moor. He knows a little bit about something. Sometimes he knows a little bit about a lot of different things.
That's right.
But praise Allah for that.
Yes, sir.
Definitely I want to before I continue, Islam to everyone on the chat. We've been getting a great response. And definitely gratitude to everyone who's been listening, those who've been in since the beginning of this broadcast, all the way to those who came a little later. We definitely appreciate it. A little over 2 hours, and I know we can go in for much longer.
Islam, boy, it's been 2 hours already. Praise Allah. Time is flying.
To people, anything that you would like to convey that we did not talk about. There's no time limit, but like I said, you anything you want to say, because I was looking to see if there was any questions, but there's no questions right now. So any last thing you want to say, just go in and just build on who is a lot to the
Absolutely.
Moors.
Absolutely. Again, I want to give, high honors to our brother Shem for the work that he's doing with this platform. Because again, there's not a lot of, Moorish American Muslim outlets, to put forth the position of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and where information can be extended or learning can be extended based on his foundation. This was the inspiration behind us founding the Alhambra 19 publishing website, and or the publishing company period, was because, there are a lot of, there's certain websites that are out there that are selling literature and all types of packets and all this type of stuff, that are shrouded in, the externality of Moorish. But, upon inspection, this stuff has nothing to do with the Prophet. So, we have to utilize, every aspect that we have at our disposal, to clarify the position of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to clarify, and I know tonight's discussion is who was Allah to the Moors, clarify, where we stand with our divine creed. There's a lot of stuff being put forth, about terrorism and all this type of stuff. Moors, we love this country. This is our country. This is our nation. This is our forefathers' nation. So we would never do a thing to harm this nation. And in fact, everything we do as members of the Moorish Science Temple of America is to uplift fallen humanity and teach those things necessary to make our people better citizens. So, the divine creed aspect is definitely necessary, because what it does is it gives the moral base, the inner reflection relative to one's duty generating obligation, where one feels duty bound to do more on the national side. You see? So, when you really start to reflect on that, that topic we've been discussing tonight, which is who is Allah to the Moors. When you really, really start unfolding this topic, you're going to be surprised who that Allah is that you're looking for. And, it's no strange happening, that, the Prophet said, the nearest place to meet Allah is in the heart. He didn't say that was the only place. He said that's the nearest place, and in terms of a dualistic mind state, in terms of polarity, what I'm saying, opposite of near is far. So yeah, there are far places to find Allah, but he told you that the nearest place to find Allah was in your heart. Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him, said Allah is closer to you than your own jugular vein, So it's just like, that Allah that you seek is internal. You are that, all the things that you seek from the great God Allah, you are capable of. If you want mercy, you got to demonstrate mercy. If you want compassion, you got to demonstrate compassion. If you want industry, you have to demonstrate industry. So it's nothing far off. And you have to be that Allah that's manifest to inspire humanity to want to uplift themselves. Because if we don't do this, then, we can't fault humanity for being in the condition that it's in. If you are a Moorish American Muslim with a fez upon your head, a turban upon your head, with a crescent pin, with the titles of nobility or the tribal names of Il and Bey, these degrees of learning, it is your obligation to take what you've learned, your gifts of understanding, and speak to the nations of the earth, to let them know that the ones that civilized humanity in ancient times have returned. And we're here to do the same thing all over again. There's no strange happening. The last time the Moors were here, as history records in contemporary ancient history, if I can use that again, it was in a dark age. And here we are again. And people forget they're in the dark ages, because we have technology now. but the mentality is still Dark Age. So we're here to to bring in that Enlightenment period again through reason, through actualizing your own self-divinity in order to change the condition that's found amongst humanity. So with that, I'll throw it back to our brother Shem, who's done an excellent job moderating this particular demonstration. Thank you, brother Shem. I yield the floor.
Islam, brother. Gratitude. It's been my pleasure. It's been an honor to have
Praise
you,
Allah.
brother. Honest to each and every one of you who's listening. This has been excellent. I'm just so happy that we got the chance to get my brother here on this
Praise
platform
Allah.
and really, again, everybody get the book. If you have not received the book, that is Who is Allah to the Moors. Heru Ranesi-El. I did the website up there. Definitely Alhambra EUB, and again, Sheikh, to
No
and
problem. Brother
thank
Shem,
you
may
all.
I close with a verse from the Prophet?
Absolutely, praise Allah. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, more. Just a few verses, nothing, don't want to burden the Moors. Chapter 35 in a chapter entitled Religion in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Verse 20 states, has he endued thee with reason to maintain thy dominion? He hath fitted thee with language to improve thy society, and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation to contemplate and adore his inimitable perfections. And in the laws he has ordained as the rule of life, hath he united thy duty to thy nature, that obedience to his precepts is happiness to thyself. O praise his goodness with songs of thanksgiving, and meditate in silence on the wonders of his love. Let thy love overflow with gratitude and acknowledgement. Let thy language of thy lips speak praise and adoration. Let thy actions of thy life show thy love to his law. Allah is just and righteous, and will judge the earth with equity and truth. Surely Allah speaks the truth to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Islam, brother.
Islam, Sheikh. Praise Allah. And close. Peace and love, Sheikh. All the
Peace and love,
listeners.
Muslim. Keep up the good work, and thank you for all the listeners for listening to our very lengthy demonstration. And thank you for all the love and support. And again, check out the website and let us know if we can, fulfill your needs to extend the learning on the Moorish American Muslim basis. Thank you.
Peace and love.
Peace.